Now, obviously, you know about the devastating explosion that went off in Oslo, Norway, their capital. Blast blows out most of the windows of the government building housing the prime minister's office. Massive vehicle bomb, a bomb inside a vehicle. We've got some footage of that we're rolling for prisonplanet.tv viewers right now. Also, there's a report of people trapped in the building. It looks like Oklahoma City-style devastation. If you haven't seen the video, if you're listening on the radio. Eyewitnesses report total chaos. Now, I'm going to be breaking this down more coming up after I get to some of the other news, or at least let you know what's coming up and what's on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com today. But I told you continually in the last year that when Europe went under total bankruptcy implosion by the IMF and World Bank operatives that have been put in place as finance ministers, presidents, and prime ministers of every country, from Germany to Greece, from England to Ireland to Norway, that there would be terror attacks launched. Now, there are different types of terror attacks. There are real, low-intensity, asymmetrical attacks launched by people in the Middle East because they believe they're occupied. They call it fighting back against tanks and helicopters. The media calls it terrorism. Regardless of what your view is, it does exist. Then there are provocateur attacks, and there's different sub-derivatives of that. There are cases, and this has come out over and over again, even in mainstream media and government documents. We've covered it ad nauseum in films like Terror Storm, where the Pakistani government, British, Israeli, U.S., Russian, all major governments do this. They go hire a criminal group to then go form and recruit real, unstable, merc-type psychopath terrorists to go carry out attacks. And Western governments and major corporations fund it, but the actual terrorists don't even know what they're doing. Then there's the other provocateur attacks that we've seen the FBI carry out. And again, remember in the last 2 years, countless articles in the news admitting FBI set up patsies, FBI set up mentally ill man. You've seen the headlines. They recruit people out of prisons, normally with very low IQs. They want them to, blow up the Christmas tree event in Portland or bomb the Tube in England. On and on and on, and they will set up a mosque, recruit the people, and command them that under Islam they must do this. And so those are provocateur events with patsies. The first World Trade Center came out in the New York Times, CBS News, because whistleblowers inside the government, Maad Salam was one of them, because he thought they were going to set him up. He was the confidential informant. He recorded the FBI ordering him, and the tapes were released, to carry out the bombing. And he said, but first it was going to be a fake bomb. Then you said, no, it's got to be a real bomb. Then it was fake detonators. Then you said, no, real detonators. Now you're saying let it go forward. And they found 2 men on welfare with below 80 IQs. They were mildly mentally retarded. And thank God they didn't park it up against the real column as they were trained to do, or it could have really damaged and killed more people in the first World Trade Center attack. So there's those attacks. So there's different types of provocateur attacks. There's attacks where you got real terrorists, don't know who they're being financed by. But then you also have some real terrorists, very rare, better chance of, again, dying from a honeybee sting. We posted those statistics from major university studies yesterday in our article that went globally viral. DHS says that white people are the #1 terror threat. We're going to be breaking that down more today. But then you have the purely staged event. Purely staged events like Oklahoma City and ATF operation. We've gone over that ad nauseum. Cover it in my film Road to Tyranny with the total proof, and 9/11. But then they've still got to have patsies, a McVeigh or a Muhammad Atta, a Lee Harvey Oswald type. And you need to investigate those for yourself and find out about them. And, of course, over 200 U.S. government-sponsored terror attacks with NATO have been declassified by the British and the Italians. The U.S. has never declassified it, but those were joint operations with the British, German, Italian governments in Operation Gladio and the NATO stay-behind networks. And those were bombings carried out all over Western and Central and Southern Europe, the majority of them in Italy. Bologna bombing, you can look that up. Just type in Italian Parliament declassifies that Bologna bombing staged by NATO. And they like to target children. School buses are a favorite. And they're going to move these systems into the United States and Europe. Now, I told you this would come when the total collapse of Europe began. Next, they'll move to the United States and England. And right as the banks seize the pension funds, go after the private pension funds, right as they slash benefits but increase taxes, the terror attacks will be staged so that you are distracted by that and rally around the government in fear. They will also use it to knock off enemies. They like to kill multiple birds with one stone. And we're doing research right now on the leader of Norway. I was already aware of this individual not going along with the EU takeover. So they will also then not just get everybody to rally around the corrupt bureaucracy by staging terror attacks through the different variants. We don't know what type this is yet. But with the timing, it's not the very rare actual terror attack. I can tell you right now, 98% chance. There is a chance it could be real. I would say 2%. And this is all I do is eat, drink, sleep, and study this. I interview every global terrorism experts, the top professors, the top heads of Pentagon and CIA Black Ops. By the way, we got to get Steve Pachinik on. He called me a few weeks ago. I meant to call him back. Jaron, I want to get Pachinik on Sunday or Monday if he can do it, and apologize. I meant to call him back. He talked about this kind of stuff coming up. I want to get him back on. Dr. Steve Pachinik, former head of Black Op. Well, he wrote the book on modern Black Ops and staged events, and he's gone public with the bin Laden thing and 9/11 being staged. I need to get him on because things are quickening, and he agreed with my analysis 2 months ago that these bombings would be coming during the implosion. That's definitely one of the main cards they're going to play. So it has begun. It has begun. In fact, if we could even maybe get Pachinik to pop in a little bit with Chapman as a prelude or as an entree, an hors d'oeuvre to Sunday, that might even be good. But we'll see what happens with that today. But that just popped into my mind that we need to get him on. At least 2 killed in Oslo bombing, scores injured, explosions damaged buildings in Norwegian capital. Reportedly, the Prime Minister was in the building. Chaos, people trapped. We'll continue to cover this as it develops and unfolds. Also, we told you this last week because of our sources that you could look for a criminal investigation to be opened by the George Soros Justice Department. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be an investigation, but again, you have Satan in investigating Baphomet here. I mean, this is ridiculous. James Murdoch denies misleading panel. Reuters, Bloomberg, News of the World workers are offered jobs in Siberia. So the old joke, we'll send you to Siberia or the North Pole. Dow Jones outpost. Justice Department prepares subpoenas and News Corps inquiry to feed that, of course, into Soros. It continues that old allies of Murdoch are turning against him, London Independent. So we'll be looking at that. Meanwhile, Senator Grassley and also Congressman Issa have been saying for weeks, and there's more news on this today, that clearly the Justice Department and Eric Holder have been caught perjuring themselves on not knowing about Fast and Furious. It's now confirmed from California to Texas to Illinois to Florida, the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, they're not just shipping guns to Mexico by the tens of thousands. They're shipping them to drug gangs inside the United States and then blaming the Second Amendment. At least 5 cops now have been killed by this in the last 2 years, and 3 Border Patrol agents confirmed. 3 Border Patrol agents, 5 cops. The Attorney General is an accessory to murder. If you or I went and sold guns to gangs that we knew were targeting police that are very vicious, like MS-13, Los Zetas, and others, you would get life in prison. In fact, they might even finagle a jury to convict you for accessory to murder, which you can get executed for. Now, this is serious business here we're talking about. So remember, while we're talking about hacking scandals and things, and people are dying who are associated with it, and this could bring down the Prime Minister, and I think there should be an investigation, what about the Attorney General? What about George Soros' Media Matters bragging publicly and memos going out, political reporting, we're going to infiltrate and get hired at News Corps, and we're going to destroy them from within? That's sabotage. That's just as illegal as what's going on here. So there is a serious war going on right now. Continuing, Grassley sees DOJ cover-up in Fast and Furious investigation. A senior Senate Republican has accused the Justice Department of a cover-up. Well, they got caught perjuring themselves. It's now confirmed they ordered it by limiting information to Congress about a botched gun-running program along the southwest border. Only thing that was botched is they got caught. Okay? It isn't botched that they wanted to stop guns. They wanted to blame the Second Amendment. And they don't care they've been caught staging this. They're still going after the Second Amendment using what they did as the excuse. Well, I'm sure Norway is going to go along with the bailout of the bankers, which is really the takeover of the bankers. After all, they need to do what the government says. Terrorists just hit them and hit them hard today. You can look for that every time bankers take down a country. The terrorist hit. So everybody, again, rallies around the government. Breaking, Oslo blast targets Prime Minister's office. Massive vehicle bomb report, people trapped. Eyewitnesses, total chaos. I've been playing that video for folks that are watching the radio show at prisonplanet.tv. We're going to get into General Electric reports a 21.6 rise in profits, pays zero taxes. Well, when you run the President's Economic Council, you get to shut down the power plants you don't own. Your profits go up. You're tax-free. And your boys write the tax laws. We've had the head of General Electric lately calling for tax increases on the rich. They mean the person that owns a restaurant and drives a Mercedes. The average folks think that's rich, and don't worry, they'll be destroyed, and you won't ever have any jobs. And a lot of you will be homeless. But, hey, it'll be fun to buy into big government. That's a receivership arm for the government. Yeah, paid no tax on $5.1 billion profit. Boehner says they're not even close to an agreement on the debt ceiling. Democrats outraged, want more taxes. Senate rejects House plan, takes weekend off. So even the House's paltry, what, $2 trillion or so in cuts over a few years, that's nothing. Paltry cut, that has been completely overturned. Pressure, S&P, the ratings agencies that work for the big banks are threatening to downgrade the U.S., downgrade multiple states within the United States if we don't, again, give the bankers everything. We've already given them more than all the real assets in the world, and they're just creating more derivatives and then demanding we underwrite those. So we're going to continue breaking all of that down. But I cannot state any more clearly to all of you out there just how big of a deal this is, just how huge it is that there have been bombings in Europe, because 9 times out of 10 or more, these bombings in Europe and the United States are completely 100% staged. And it's been proven over and over again, and I told you it would come during the big economic takeover of Europe. And speaking of economic takeover, states negotiating immunity for banks over foreclosures. State attorneys generals are negotiating to give major banks wide immunity over irregularities, taking people's houses they didn't own, lying in court about owning them, in handling foreclosures, even as evidence has emerged that banks are continuing to file questionable documents. Of course they are. That's out of Reuters. And the same thing's going on in Europe. This isn't going to go away. I mean, again, 12 years ago, the government signed deals with major insurance companies to steal the death benefits of all veterans. When you die, you pay into insurance, you're not going to get it. And the media doesn't care. The government, in fact, it's unpatriotic, it's anti-military to even mention it. You're just supposed to wrap tyranny in a flag, worship it. That's patriotism. Well, I guess we're just not patriotic here then. We don't like the offshore banks doing this. A coalition of 50 state attorney generals has been negotiating settlements with 5 of the biggest U.S. banks, globalist banks, that would include payment of up to $25 billion in penalties, they've stolen trillions, and commitments to follow new rules. In exchange, the banks would get immunity from civil lawsuits by the states. Slap on the wrist. Yeah, Wells Fargo and Wachovia launder $300+ billion in 2 years of drug money. They get a $100 million fine.